Hello gentlemen and ladies, and welcome again this week to Agrestal Vestige, where we are vested in all things Agrestal. Have to get your tagline out, you know. My name is Tom, and guess what? We're here for another blended Scotch whiskey review. And this week, it's Macgregor's. Macgregor's, fairly accessible. You see it in a lot of places. Extremely reasonably priced. This 1 liter bottle cost me around 15 pounds, dollars, euros, whatever you want to, you know, wherever you're at in the world, it'll cost around that. So, also, it's in a green bottle, and you know how I like things in green bottles, because that typically means they haven't been colored with caramel E150A that they always put in whiskeys, because apparently they think, and it's probably true, that the general public believe that the darker the whiskey, the richer the flavor. That's not necessarily true at all. I know many a light colored whiskey that will completely astound you with smells, tastes, flavors, and richness. What do we have? Hey, look at that. Another light colored whiskey. They don't need the addition of caramel, E150A colorant. You typically don't if you're looking to deliver a nice quality experience in your blended Scotch whiskey. Now, obviously there's probably been chill filtering taking place, because a lot of the blended Scotch whiskeys contain grain that was made in column stills. I mean, as well as malt whiskeys made in pot stills. But you're going to get that, so it is what it is. So what is Clan Macgregor? It's a blended Scotch whiskey. It doesn't say a lot about it. Blend of malts and grains, complex, sweet, mellow in flavor. Hey, I like the fact they use mellow and not the word smooth. You know how I hate that word. Anyway, what do we have with Clan Macgregor on the nose? Not grain rich at all. It's very clean, very mild, fresh apples, fresh pears. It does have that grainy sweetness, which is nice, which means it was proper grains that were put in here, properly maturated grain whiskeys. There's a subtle hint of vanilla and honey. Slight malty character to this. Touch of citrus. And faint floral undertones. Actually, you know, it's a lot more complex than a lot of cheap blends, and you don't get that grain on the nose. Do we get it on the palate? Well, let's see, shall we? Not whatsoever. That's a very light-bodied, sweet grain forward, not grain forward, sweet grain. Very nicely maturated grain whiskey. I mean, a crisp apple. Yep, crisp apple, juicy pear, hints of caramel, of vanilla. It does have a soft maltiness to it. I don't know what the percentage in this of malt and grains are. I couldn't find out. But it's got a lovely maltiness to it, but it's ever so slight and soft. It's a touch of spice in here, mainly pepper, like a black pepper. I mean, it's just light and unobtrusive, really. I wouldn't call the finish short. I wouldn't call it long. It's somewhere between short and medium, but there's a hint of oakiness to it and that light spice note, and you have that lingering note of that sweet maltiness on the finish. It seems to be fairly well balanced. Let's see, what ABV is this? 40% standard blend. So I'm going to add just a touch of water. Considering how much I've got in my glass, I'm just going to add 1 milliliter. Roll that around the glass. Let that settle for a second. Now, Clan Macgregor is a product of William Grant and Sons, one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. Actually, I think it's on the 6th generation now. They're the ones that make the other blended whiskeys like Grant's Triple Wood, Grant's Family Reserve. And also they make single malts. The Balvenie and the most notorious Glenfiddich, which probably, since it's a William Grant and Son product, is the main malts that make up this blend. Probably. At least that's what it's tasting like. William Grant and Son has been around for ages and ages, since the early 1800s. And they probably sell more single malt with the Glenfiddich than anyone else. It's one of the most widely recognized, widely accessible single malts, even though in recent times it's not very financially accessible. It keeps going up in price, but then so does everything else. But this is a 1 liter bottle, and at 15 pounds, dollars, euros, this is quite a remarkable deal, I think, because look at that. There's no bitterness from that, all that caramel colorant added. It's somewhat complex for a blend. After adding the water, let's nose it. Actually, the water, believe it or not, even though this is at 40%, it really brings out and enhances the flavors that I mentioned earlier, and especially those floral notes. It brought them forward, and it really opens up the nose, and it enhances that citrus, note that I mentioned earlier, which was real light and faint and suggestive. Now it's there. But the green apples and the pears are kind of taking center stage on the nose. You still have that grain sweetness. You still have the herbal undertones, but they're more noticeable. Let's see on the palate. Yeah, the apple and citrus become more prominent, brighter. The whiskey becomes softer. It's not a viscous or a silky whiskey. It's just it's a nice consistency. It's not light and fizzy type, but I mean, it's a good consistency. The malt and vanilla remain the same. The spice, however, is a little more subdued than it was before adding the water. But overall, the profile becomes lighter, more well-rounded. And the finish is short now after adding the water. And there's a touch of sweetness there, which I'm assuming is coming from the grain whiskey. There's a hint of real soft malt and a taint in the finish of that citrusy zest. So all in all, if you think about it, on the nose, the palate, the finish, after adding the water, the nose, the development, the arrival, the finish, I mean, it's fairly consistent. There's no bitterness here. So it's a good quality cask, which you can assume that with William Grant and Son. They don't use, third and fourth refill cask. You can tell that here. It doesn't have a bitterness to it. It's not tannic. I mean, I hate to use the word simple because it's not exactly simple compared to a lot of blends. But for a simple blended malt at an extremely reasonable price point, I don't think you can beat it and go wrong, really. I mean, it's a very competent, mildly complex blended Scotch whiskey at this price point. There's no off notes to this whatsoever. None. What you get is a lot of different hints of different notes. There's none that just come out and slap you in the face and go, wow, this is this, and woo, this is this. It's just a nice, semi-complex mixture of different flavor profiles, blended perfectly in this whiskey. This is a lovely, year-round, everyday type dram for somebody. And look at that. You can't beat that color. There's nothing that stands out in this whiskey, and good or bad, but it's a pleasant, enjoyable, chatting with your friends, relaxing in your chair reading a book, not wanting to think about things too much, not wanting to think about, getting every flavor nuance that you can get out of something. If you just want something to sit back, relax, enjoy, that's not harsh, that's quite pleasant, it gives you a lot of suggestive flavor notes, then you can't beat this. I mean, this is a lovely whiskey. And I mean, I was completely and totally surprised because this is on the bottom shelf everywhere I go. But like I've said before, many, many, many times, and as I've displayed here on this channel many times, it doesn't matter what shelf it's on. You can get absolute rubbish, crap on the top shelf, and I have done many times. And you can get the most loveliest of lovely things on the bottom shelf. It's all a matter of doing your due diligence, your research, trying things out, spending your money, listening to different reviews, find some reviewer that that mirrors your palate or is close to, and glean from them. But really, there's nothing more to it. If I was going to rate this out of marks out of 100, it's simple. not complex, but what it is and what it does brilliantly. So for a blended Scotch whiskey, Mark, I would rank this, rate this, a strong 88 out of 100. It is what it is. Casual, everyday, no nonsense dram of whiskey. Anyway, that's it for me this week. I'm Tom of the Gressville Vestige, and with my buddy here from the Clan Macgregor. Until next week, Slàinte mhath.